Imagine the entire global economy, your heating bill, your gas pump, the price of every product you buy, all of it balancing on a strip of ocean so narrow you could swim across it. This is the Strait of Hormuz, and right now it is the single most important choke point on planet Earth. But what if it could be bypassed entirely? What if engineers built a canal through the mountains of Oman, a massive shortcut that would make the strait irrelevant? It sounds brilliant. On paper, it almost works. But when you zoom in, the geology, the geopolitics, the cost, the consequences, things get complicated. Today, we're going to break it all down. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this tiny strip of water is arguably the most powerful geographic feature on Earth, and why nobody has been able to replace it. Let's start with geography. The Persian Gulf is basically a giant enclosed sea, surrounded by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. It's one of the world's most oil-rich regions. But here's the problem. There's only one way in or out by sea. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage between Iran to the north and the Musandam Peninsula of Oman to the south. At its narrowest point, the strait is only about 21 miles wide. And the actual shipping lanes, just 2 miles wide. One going in, one going out, with a 2-mile buffer zone in between. 2 miles. That's the width of a small town. And through it flows roughly 20 to 21% of all the world's traded oil every single day. No other single point in the world controls this much energy. Not the Suez Canal, not the Strait of Malacca. Nothing comes close. The problem isn't just that it's narrow, it's who controls the northern shore. Iran sits directly on one side of this strait, and Iran has, on multiple occasions, threatened to close it entirely, using mines, naval blockades, or military force. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, this nearly happened. Tankers were attacked, insurance premiums skyrocketed. The US Navy had to escort oil tankers through the strait, and today, the tension hasn't gone away. Every time there's a conflict in the Middle East, every time sanctions tighten, the question resurfaces. What would happen if the Strait of Hormuz closed? The answer, according to most economists, would be catastrophic. Oil prices could spike by 50 to 100% or more within days. Global markets would panic. Entire economies, particularly in Asia and Europe, would be thrown into crisis, all because of 2 miles of water. So here's where it gets interesting. Look at a map. The Musandam Peninsula, that small finger of Omani territory that juts into the strait, is actually very close to the Gulf of Oman on its other side. The distance between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman through this peninsula is only about 50 to 70 kilometers in some areas. And that gave some engineers and strategists a wild idea. What if you cut a canal right through it? Ships could load up in the Persian Gulf, slip through a purpose-built canal, and emerge directly into the Gulf of Oman, completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. Iran would lose its strategic stranglehold overnight. On a map, it looks almost obvious. Elegant even. So why hasn't it been built? Because the Musandam Peninsula isn't just a piece of flat land waiting to be dug up. It is one of the most rugged, mountainous, geologically complex terrains in the Arabian Peninsula. The Hajar Mountains run through this region. We're talking about peaks reaching over 1,000 meters, sheer cliff faces, and some of the hardest rock formations on Earth. Ancient ophiolite sequences that are essentially ancient ocean floor, uplifted and hardened over millions of years. Building a canal through this isn't like digging through sand. It would require blasting through mountains, millions of tons of rock, for tens of kilometers. To give you a sense of scale, the Panama Canal, which took about 10 years to build and cost thousands of lives, cut through much softer terrain in a narrower isthmus. The Musandam Canal would be arguably more difficult. Rough estimates put the cost somewhere between $200 and $500 billion. Some analysts think even that is too low. And then there's the depth problem. Modern supertankers, the massive VLCCs that carry most of the world's oil, require a draft of around 20 to 24 meters. The canal would need to be cut not just wide, but incredibly deep, through solid mountain rock. The engineering challenges alone would make this one of the most complex construction projects in human history. And then there's what gets destroyed to make it happen. The Musandam Peninsula is home to some of the most pristine marine ecosystems in the Arabian Sea. Coral reefs, rare marine species, dolphins, whale sharks, seabird colonies that nest in the cliff faces. Blasting through this terrain would generate construction pollution on a scale almost impossible to contain. The sediment runoff runoff alone could devastate the surrounding marine environment for decades. And unlike a canal through flat land, the rocky terrain would make rerouting drainage and managing the environmental footprint extraordinarily difficult. Now let's say you solved the engineering problem. Let's say the money appeared. There's still a massive wall of politics in the way. Oman owns the Musandam Peninsula. Oman, which has historically pursued a careful policy of neutrality and diplomatic balance in the region, has shown no official interest in building such a canal. And why would they? A canal of this strategic importance would immediately make Oman a geopolitical target. Every major power, the United States, China, Russia, the Gulf states, Iran, would want influence over it. Oman would go from being a calm, respected, neutral party to a flashpoint in a global power struggle. Who would fund it? Who would control it? Who would protect it? These aren't small questions. They're questions that could spark entire diplomatic crises. And remember, even if you built a canal, you haven't removed the vulnerability. You've just created a second choke point. Now there are two places that can be blocked, sabotaged, or attacked. A single well-placed mine or a targeted missile strike could close a canal just as effectively as it could close a strait. You'd be spending hundreds of billions of dollars to replace one vulnerability with another. In reality, the world hasn't been idle. Countries have been quietly building partial alternatives, not canals, but pipelines. The UAE completed the Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline in 2012, a 400-kilometer pipeline that runs from Abu Dhabi's oil fields to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman, bypassing the strait entirely. Saudi Arabia has the East-West pipeline, the Petroline, which can move oil from the eastern province to the Red Sea port of Yanbu, again bypassing Hormuz. These pipelines can handle significant volumes of oil, but they can't replace the strait entirely. They're not big enough, fast enough, or cheap enough to compensate for a full closure. The strait remains, for now, irreplaceable. Here's what the Musandam Canal idea really reveals. And this is the part most people miss. Yeah, the fact that we're even having this conversation, that engineers and strategists are seriously drawing up blueprints for a $400 billion mountain-cutting mega canal, tells you something profound about the world we live in. Modern civilization runs on thin threads. A single 2-mile stretch of ocean, a single canal, a single pipeline. Remove any one of them and billions of people feel it in their fuel bills, their grocery prices, their economic stability. We've built this extraordinary, interconnected global economy, and we've routed much of its energy supply through geographic bottlenecks that any determined adversary can threaten. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a shipping lane. It's a mirror. It reflects back at us the precariousness of how modern supply chains are designed. And for all the talk of energy transition, hubs of solar panels and electric vehicles, the world still burns over 100 million barrels of oil every single day. The transition is happening, but it will take decades. And until then, the Strait of Hormuz remains exactly what it has always been. The jugular vein of the global economy, the Musandam Canal, for now, remains what it has always been. A fascinating idea. A thought experiment for engineers and strategists. A dream that runs aground on mountains, money, and geopolitics. Maybe one day, when the technology is cheaper, the politics more cooperative, and the need more urgent, someone will push the first blast through those ancient rocks. Or maybe, and this seems more likely, the world will simply find other ways. More pipelines, more diversified supply chains, more renewable energy. A slow untying of the knot that binds so much of human civilization to this narrow strip of water. Either way, for the foreseeable future, every time you fill up your car, every time you pay a heating bill, every time you buy something that was shipped across an ocean, somewhere in the background, a tanker is threading the needle through a 2-mile corridor between Iran and Oman. And the world is holding its breath. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person who should be subscribed to this channel. We cover the hidden systems, the overlooked geography, the engineering stories that shape the world most people never think about. So hit subscribe. And here's what I want from you in the comments. If you were in charge and money was no object, would you build the Musandam Canal? Or would you spend that money on something else entirely? Let me know below. And if you want to go deeper on global trade routes and latest discoveries, make sure to hit subscribe. Stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.